ain't going back. Not gonna buy into all that. Hey, hey, ain't gonna hide. Gonna let all the fears slide. Got Mother Nature on my side. Got all of the loving.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the New Now. I am also here once again with QuietBear, and we discussed before we got on the air the purposeful path. Let's say the origins of QuietBear and how he became the man he is today. QuietBear, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Good. Nice to be with you again today.
Yeah, it's been a busy day already. You know, every day we're just plowing through it.
I understand.
Yeah, it's kind of warm. Got the dogs. My wife's Marcella's out getting her eyes checked, and so I have the house for myself today. So
nice. It's always good to see. It's always good to see clearly. So yes, QuietBear, so I know we talked a little bit in one of the previous ones on how you became who you were. You know, we started with
1 second. Girly, the taxi's here. I just ignore it. They'll quiet down.
So yeah, let's begin with your origins.
Okay, so you know, through my life as a kid, teenager, growing up, I was always a spiritual person. I was never attracted to religions. I tried it. I tried going to a church here and a church there, and really just trying to figure things out along the way. And I think I'd mentioned this before. I was planning on being a police officer. I wanted to help people. I truly believed in the protect and serve, not the way the police forces seem to have gone in today's world with the insanities. But so I'd been driving truck and working heavy equipment and things like that, just to make things, make ends meet. And I took a job as a store detective for Woolworths in downtown Sacramento. And I started stopping. I was arresting shoplifters. That was my job. And then I was in line to go to the police academy for the Sacramento Police Academy. And I had been in the Air Force. I was a policeman in the Air Force. So I already had training as a police officer. And when I was 24 years old, well, let me step back one bit. On my first week of doing my job, I arrested a guy, a middle-aged guy, for stealing some shoes. And I took him, he fought me, and we went to the office. The cops came, they arrested him, and he had some priors, and he had a warrant out for his arrest, so they arrested him. So time rolls on. I'm doing my job every day, stopping shoplifters, and I was getting, anywhere from 2 to 5 a day. And so then one day on January 30th of 1982, it was about 20 minutes before closing time. I was in my office doing some paperwork, and the store manager calls me on the intercom line and says, "Hey, there's this guy down here, and he's stealing a lot of stuff, and he's being really obvious about it." And I said, "Okay, I'll be right down." So when I went down, I didn't recognize the guy. And but I saw him. They pointed him out. I was watching him, and he was just stuffing his pockets. And, I was like, man, this guy's being really obvious about this. So what I did was, what I did a lot of times is I'd walk outside, and the whole front of the store was glass. So I could look inside and watch for their final movements as they tried to sneak out without paying. And so I watched him. He just walked right past the register. I had let a couple of the other people know. This is classic. And so, so I was standing there waiting for him. It was cold. It was January 30th. It was really cold outside. It was coming up on 5:00 p.m. I had a jacket on with my hands in my jacket pockets, and I watched him walk out. And I had a badge in a folding wallet that I would show people to say, "Stop! You've left the store without paying." And so as he did that, I had my hand in my pocket, And I flipped it out, and literally, I mean, the second I flipped it out and looked at him, I recognized him. I realized that I had arrested him before. And I went, hey, you left the store without, and before I got anything else out, he had a knife in his hand, with the blade up in his hand and the handle up his sleeve. And he dropped it out to the handle and he hit me right there in the upper abdomen. And I knew I'd been stabbed. I mean, he put it in and he spun it, and I pushed him away. And then I yelled, I'd been stabbed, and he took off running. And one guy took off after him and was telling people, he stabbed a guy, he stabbed a guy. So they eventually caught him. I was about a block and a half from the state capitol, and they caught him on the Capitol grounds. Now, from my end of things, at that moment, I'm laying on the ground. I could feel that, things weren't right. And this lady that worked at the store with me, she put my head in her lap. I'm laying there, and it was getting harder and harder to breathe. And I knew I was going to die. I could feel it. I could feel my life slipping away. And she kept trying to reassure me, and everybody was reassuring me, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And then like that, I was above my body. And I felt a very sharp pain in my heart. And that was it. There wasn't any lingering or anything. But the next thing I remembered, the next thing that happened was I was over my body, looking at my body. Okay. And I was looking down at myself by the height of what appeared to be about 3 feet or so. And the thing was, I could see my eyes were closed on the body. And I couldn't really place what had just happened. I didn't know immediately, oh my God, I'm dead. I didn't think that. But I was just like, wow, why is everybody so upset? Because where I was suddenly was very calm, very quiet. There was no more pain. I couldn't hear anything, but I could see that the lady holding my head in her lap, she was crying. I could see she was crying. And I was just like, wow, oh my gosh. And it still the thought never entered my mind, you're dead. That never occurred. But then what started happening is I felt like I was raising up and floating up. And as I was doing that, everything started going gray. Everything just sort of faded away. And then I had the feeling like I was floating, but I was in a sitting position. My knees were kind of up, my arms were kind of out. And I didn't feel movement, but I felt like I was floating. And I didn't have, I had a body sense. I could sense, how you can feel, your body. I could sense that, but I couldn't see anything. Okay. It was just, it wasn't black. It just wasn't anything. And then it's funny how even 40 years later, how it triggers emotions. And so then I realized that I was dead. I realized that I wasn't living anymore. And the next thought that hit me was, oh my God, we don't end. Death isn't the end. It's not the end. And I was actually kind of happy about that. I was like, wow, we really don't end. And then it was like, I saw the light that everybody speaks about. They talk about the little pinpoint of light. And somehow I knew instinctively not to go to that light. I knew to turn away from it. And I felt my body, I felt my sense of body turning away from the light. And as I did, it grew lighter. Okay. And it was what I felt like, the way I describe it is a organic light. And it was everywhere, but there was no pinpoint. There was no focus of light. And then I felt a presence around me. I felt as if I was surrounded by this presence. There was no words. There was just pictures. And then I realized that I was starting to relive my life. I was starting to have what I later realized was a life review. And it wasn't a judgment. There wasn't any judgments. But again, There was a sense of a greater being with me, and I felt it off to my right more than anything, but I still felt surrounded by it. There was no fear. And the reason for that is ego is with the body. It's not with our consciousness. And so I started reliving the things in my life. And if I did something that made someone feel good, I felt what they felt. If I did something that made someone feel bad, I felt what they felt. Again, there was no judgment. It was just an understanding of the things I did in my life. Now, I'm talking about these things linearly here, but there it wasn't like starting at age 1, this is what you did. And age 2, this is what you did. And age, it wasn't like that. It was just different pictures of things that were slowly coming up and forming in front of me. Almost like looking into a cloud, where you would see like a hologram. That I'm thinking these things over the years since then, but in the moment it just seemed natural. And I could sense everything that I had done and everything that I had caused others to feel, no matter what that was, so that I could understand what my actions created in my life. And then it was nearing the moment. I had a couple of flashes of people that I had arrested recently in my job at that time. And I could tell that it was coming near an end. And I could see my wife, I could see my child. I had a 6-month-old child at the time. He's a mountain of a man now. He's in his 39 now. And so I had this feeling of I could go to the left. I could move this way. It wasn't left or right. I could just move this way and I would go on with my journey as a soul. Or I could go the other way and go back to the life I was in, learn what I had, bring into my life what I had just learned, the things I had learned. And I thought, I want to see my son grow up. That was, I really want to see him grow up. I don't want to end this now. And then all of a sudden, I was on my back, laying. I could feel something across my face. I opened my eyes and there was a whiteness. And I was like, what is this? And I could feel movement, and I realized that I was in the ambulance. And so I tried to move and I couldn't move because I had straps. I could tell that I was strapped in. And I tried to talk and my throat was so dry that I couldn't form a word. So I started making noises. I was making grunting noises to try and get somebody's attention. I could hear noises. I could hear a radio chatter. And then, so what I did was I bunched up the sheet with my hands and snapped my wrist so that I could pull the sheet down. It came down about halfway down my face. It was actually kind of comical at this point. The ambulance guy, the paramedic, was sitting there filling out some sort of paperwork and he had his back to me. So I made some more noises and he goes, goddamn corpses that making so much noise. And I was just like, and he turned. And when he looked at me, he went, oh my God, he's back. He's back. And he started yelling to the driver. And he pulled the sheet down. He said, are you okay? Well, how are you feeling? I was like, and he goes, oh, and he got something. He squirted water in my mouth. And the ambulance driver yelled back, how's he doing? He said, well, he was checking my vitals. He started doing the blood pressure and all that stuff. And I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I was just went through, what was going on. And the ambulance driver yells back, what hospital does he want to go to? He goes, what hospital do you want to go to? And I said, which one's closest? And he said, Sutter General. And I said, let's go there. It turns out that was the same hospital that I was born in 24 years prior. And so they get me to the hospital. During the ride, because my abdomen was filling up with blood, I raised my legs up, raised my knees up, and it relieved the pressure. When we got into the hospital, my blood pressure was dropping so low, they were afraid I was going to die again. And so they put these, they said they had to put these rubber, this air pants on. They put them on my legs and then fill them up with air. to cause pressure against the legs that pushes the blood pressure up into the abdomen around the heart. And I told, when they tried to straighten my legs out, it hurt so bad. I said, no, I can't. And the guy just turned and goes, okay, then you can die. So I pushed my legs down and they pulled the pants up, and he goes, don't worry, you can bend them again. He lied to me. He couldn't bend your legs with them filled up with air. And then from there, it was pretty much a blur. They were putting shots, giving me some sort of medications. They kept doing this thing on my ear where they would hit me with a little razor blade, and then they would tap it with this paper to test my blood clotting. I got really angry. I remember getting really angry. Why do you have to do that? And the guy was like, we're just making sure your blood's clotting properly. And then they, all of a sudden I was being wheeled down in the gurney towards the operating room. And then the medications took effect and I was out. And then when I came back, it's laying in the hospital bed, and I knew that things were different. I knew something was different. There was something different about myself. I wasn't thinking the way I would normally think, or about the things I would think about. I was having very esoteric thoughts about life, I knew what I had just experienced. I knew that I had died. They had told me that. They said, we're really glad you came back. We were taking you to the morgue. You were dead. You were gone for almost 9 minutes. And I was like, 9 minutes? I thought the brain damage in there. They said, we still don't understand. Usually 4 minutes. There does seem to be some brain damage, but you test cognitively well on everything. So obviously it didn't affect you. And so from that moment on in my life, that's when all kinds of weirdnesses started happening. My wife was sitting next to me. I'd been in the hospital for about 2.5 days. And this woman came in a nurse's uniform. And, when you're in the hospital like that, you get to know the nurses around you, the different shifts, the different people, the regulars moving in and out of the hospital room. I was in a room by myself, and this woman walked in. She had blonde hair. But the thing that struck me when I saw her was like, that looks like a wig, And so I looked over at my wife at the time. Her name was Cindy. And I said, this is interesting. And she walks over to my IV thing, which is sitting just to my left. She doesn't look at me, doesn't do anything. She had another IV bag under her arm. She unhooked the one IV, which wasn't done yet. It wasn't empty. And she set it on the bed and then hooked up the other IV, picked up the IV bag and walked out very fast. I was like, that was kind of odd, And after a few minutes, I started getting dizzy. I was like, wow. I told her, I said, Cindy, I'm starting to feel dizzy. And then I looked down because I had stitches, staples from my belly button up to my sternum. And they had cut me open to open me up, and they had to take out my gallbladder. They had to cut out part of my liver that the knife had touched. They had to sew up my heart, the inferior vena cava, because when he put the knife in, he spun it like this, and they think he may have done it more than once. And so I had big cuts all through my abdomen. So I looked down and I saw that I was starting to leak. There was blood starting to come out of where the stitches were, or the staples. And so I said, by then I was really getting dizzy. And so I said, get some help. So she ran out and got a nurse, and she come back, and Cindy told her, this nurse just changed his IV, and now he's really dizzy. The nurse walks over, she looks at the thing, she goes, oh my God. And she unhooked it and took it off, and she goes, I'll be right back. Whoever that woman was, she had hooked me up to an IV of heparin. Heparin is a blood thinner. Okay. I had over 300 stitches inside my body, and I had 50 staples on the outside. For some reason, someone was trying to take me out, and they didn't want me to make it. And so all of a sudden there was police around. They were asking me, describe the woman that you saw. But then things like that, okay, that we made it through that. The doctor came in, they checked me out. They said, we may have to go back in and tighten things up. And I said, okay, do what you got to do, you know. And they didn't have to do that. They got the heparin off quick enough, and then they thickened my blood up with something else. And then there was a lot of weird series of events. After I got out of the hospital, the doctor that was working on me, he suddenly died. He was about, I think he was like 55. His name was Dr. Moss, and he died of a sudden heart attack. And then my life just took, like I said, it just got really, really interesting. I had started having all kinds of paranormal activity around me. And then what we did is I moved back up to my parents' house with my wife and my young son. So because I couldn't work, couldn't bring any money in, and I could recover easier there, which was good because we lived in the hills, the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas. It was very isolated. And then I knew I wasn't going to be a cop anymore. I knew that I was going to be doing something. My first thought was that it was be religious. I started looking into Christianity because that was the most prevalent from where I was. There was a lot of Mormons around. Wasn't interested in any of that, but I just wanted to talk to people. So I started talking and researching and studying and just wanting to learn about spirituality. And then what happened was my studies led me towards shamanism. And I realized that shamanism wasn't a religion. It was a way of living, spiritually in life. And so I started studying and researching that, knowing that I would get back into that. But I still had to worry about, I had to worry about supporting my wife and my young child. So I went back into truck driving, and for a few years I did truck driving, construction work, the things. I went back to the things I had done before. I knew I wasn't going to be a cop anymore. That end was just done. I knew that wasn't for me anymore. Things happened, moved on. Because of the weirdnesses that had happened to me, it affected my mind. It affected the way I was thinking. I had depression. I was upset a lot. I was very confused. I started seeing a counselor, and just one thing led to another, and it turned out that I wasn't going to be staying with my wife. We ended up getting a divorce. I ended up, living on my own and, just pursuing different things. I dabbled in, I did think about going back into police work. I got contacted by some police that I had worked with, doing some undercover work for them. And so they asked me to do some work that I really don't want to go into right now. It was, suffice it to say, it was undercover work, working for the state of California. I did that for a few years. And then in 1989, I had gotten in contact with some people that I'd known years before down in Arizona, and I was drawn there. So in 1989, near the end of 89, I moved down to Phoenix, actually the Tempe area. And one thing led to another, and that's when I met the people that were involved in Deer Tribe Métis Medicine Society. And I immersed myself into the studies because they felt so natural to me. It's so right. And so I studied diligently with them for about 3.5 years with them, 3.5 to 4 years with other people, doing the circle meetings, sitting and discussing medicine things. And then I started doing more personal work, going out into the desert, into the Four Peaks area, which are the Superstition Mountains. Now that's a whole nother thing that would take another couple hours to talk about. We'll talk about that later. So that's basically what set me on my path, and all of the intuitions and the spiritual events, what you would call paranormal activity. I had a lot of, I could see things. That was one of the things that happened, was I started developing the ability to see auras. At first, that was really interesting, I thought something was wrong with my vision because I could see colors around people. And then when I relaxed into that, then I could see it all around them. It wasn't just on the outside edge. I could see them wrapped in it. And then, so my intuitions became very strong. I started trusting more and more what I was feeling. And then stepping onto that path, there was other paths of shamanism, but what attracted me to this particular line of teaching was the fact of who they were, the Twisted Hairs elders of the elders of Turtle Island. And so the Twisted Hairs teachings of the elders of Turtle Island. And so that intrigued me. And so this was the book. This is the book that everyone studies with. This is the Wheels and Keys. This became my everyday companion, guiding me, teaching me, doing my meditations. And like I said, I did solo work, basically pretty much living in the desert on my own. I would go back into town and stuff. It wasn't like I wasn't going back to nature, but I was living out there as much as I could, and I'd have to go in and get supplies. Then it came a time where people were bringing me out supplies. And then after about 3 years of that, three and a half years of that, I had a meeting with QuietBear, my teacher, and he said, it's time for you to go out and be a journeyman. And I said, okay. And he said, I'll be contacting you through the ethers. That's how we'll communicate from here on out. Don't contact me in the physical. And I said, okay. And that's how we did it. And even to this day, QuietBear has moved on. He didn't die. He moved on to the fifth world where all humanity is leading. We're in the fourth world right now. Carlos Castaneda is already in the fifth world as well. I read all of his books. Right before I took off on my journeyman trail, on my path, I met Carlos in Phoenix at a house. He had traveled up from Mexico City, and we met and talked outside for about 2.5 hours. And it was a very wonderful thing. And he told me the same thing QuietBear said: whenever you want to talk to me, meet me in the ethers and we can converse.
What did you guys talk about?
My path, what I was supposed to accomplish. I knew that I was going to be coming to this point in time where I would be fighting the demonic realm. He told me to use everything at my disposal. He said to use every tool that you have. The sweet medicine. He said the sweet medicine would be there for you. He warned me about the inorganics, the inorganic beings that he called the allies. And the reason they aren't our friends, as in allies, they're allies in that they teach us things through the difficulties that they can cause in our lives. So I have dealt with them on and off through my journeys, and it all just led to here. What I would do is I would get intuitions through the years. I would get intuitions, go to this place. And I would go and I would just start meeting the people and doing things, always studying and learning. I didn't tell them I'm a shaman. I would just be a person that had moved into their area. I would let them know that I was a spiritual person, but I never brought up shamanism, because the whole point of being a shaman of the Twisted Hairs lineage is to not boast. That's ego. That's the little self. It's to do your work without the interference of people having connotations attached to you by a label. So I would just learn, knowing that everything that I was gathering was going to help me down the road on my journey. And so I just lived. I knew I was a shaman. I knew that I was doing ceremonial magic in my life. I would try different things, do different things, but it was always with the intent of consciousness, being consciously aware of what I was doing, watching my words. Like when we've talked on our first couple of things, people have seen how I'll correct myself in mid-sentence. And that's what it takes to be an intentional being, living consciously aware of everything that we do. And so that's the thing that I want to share with everybody. If you want to walk this path, you don't have to be a shaman. You don't have to think of yourself as any one thing. But if you want to be an aware human being to where you aren't just reacting to all the different things that happen in our life, if you want to do that, you have to be focused. It is a nonstop, all the time job. Because if you become unconscious and just react in your life, that's when the demonic entities and the parasites, that's when they can slip in and make you believe that what they're saying and doing are your own thoughts. And once you've taken conscious control of your thinking with intent, that's when they can't slip in. You can hear them differently. You know it's not your true self. Because what happens is you start getting your thoughts coming from up in your solar plexus, your gut, your heart, instead of everything bouncing around inside the head. So any questions?
Well, for sure. I mean, I want to circle back perhaps to the nurse that supposedly tried to end you at that time. Did anything come of that in your dreams or your journeys, your ethers, as you considered back over the years as to what that might have been?
I know that the dark forces didn't want me to do the work that I'm doing right now. I couldn't talk to anybody about what I had experienced. I tried to talk to the therapist when I started seeing a therapist. I tried to tell him, I died and I was still alive. I was still conscious. He said, no, you weren't. And I said, yes, I was. And he goes, no, you were having hallucinations. And so when he said that, I knew just right then, you can't talk about this stuff. They're going to put you into a padded room. Okay. They're going to be pumping you full of drugs. They were already trying to pump me full of drugs. They put me on lithium and other kinds of, I can't even remember. And I never took them. I mean, I took a couple of them. They made me feel so crappy. I was like, I'm not doing this. No way. I'll work on this myself. I only saw the therapist for a few months. And then I just stopped going, because I just realized that even then, before I had started any form of formal training, I'm going to have to learn about this on my own. And that was also a big driver of entering into the shamanic world, was that at least people there wouldn't go, you didn't die. Don't worry. Yeah, that's just makeup. You had a bad dream, but they had me in the ambulance with a sheet over my head like they do corpses. So, but as far as that woman, nobody ever caught her. We never saw her again. They had a guy come in to try to do a drawing, and he did a drawing of her. And I was like, yep, that's her. But they never saw her again. Never knew. But then the thing is through my life, through the rest of my life, going up into my shaman world, there was all kinds of accidents, people ramming me in cars, where this one guy hit the side of my car, this bad accident. I went over to see if he was okay. And I was talking to him and I was like, what happened? He goes, I don't know, man. All of a sudden my foot hit the gas and he goes, I couldn't stop. He goes, I don't know what happened. And it was all kinds of weird stuff like that happening in my life that actually settled down once I started studying with Deer Tribe. When I started studying the medicine, that sort of settled down because I feel like I was more protected. And here's the part, I've talked about this before. I've said it before, but then I withdraw from that because of, I get emails and stuff from people doubting things. And so the thing is, when I came back into my body, the hardest part to grasp was I felt like I was more than before I died. I felt like I was more of me. And in fact, it felt crowded in my body. If that's correct. But I felt like I was more of myself. And now through all of my studies, all of my journeys, difficulties, insights, all the ethnogens, everything that I came to realize is that who I am right now is a more of who Michael Gibbons was before he died. More of my soul self came in, and that's what has been driving me to do this work. And I think that I know that the dark forces, they would give anything for me to just disappear, because I know that I make a difference. I know what I do out in the ethers. And that's why I worked so solo, because I didn't have to worry about what anybody else thought of me. I didn't have to worry about of getting interfered with. And that's the whole purpose of the Twisted Hairs lineage, is a soul, SOLE, practitioner moving through their life as a shamanic sorcerer. And I hesitate using the word sorcerer because of all the connotations. Okay, a sorcerer is seen as a bad magician, when that isn't it. We just know that we have to do what we have to do in order to get our job done, so that we can bring the world back to balance. And that's really, man, that's my whole goal, bringing the world back to balance.
What do you mean by back to balance?
Right now, the dark forces have taken over the world. That was by design, I believe, so that we could find out who we really are. You can't know who you are until you know who you are not. Okay. We touched on this a tiny bit in the last video. I don't think anymore. I used to believe that there has to be dark in order for the light to know itself. But what I've come to understand through my teachings, through my learning, is that we were never meant to have the darkness. The darkness infiltrated the light and made us, it seems like it's a natural event for, okay, if I shine a light on something, there is a shadow, okay? But it's not black. It's not pure darkness. It's a diffused light, okay? And that's the balance that I am working to bring back into this world, is for us to get rid of the darkness so that the light can shine more fully. We can have struggles in our life to grow through and become stronger in, without having to deal with the horror that the darkness brings, that the demons and the parasites and the just the ugly lizard-like beings that are running things right now. They want to take over the light. They want to consume the light and have a world of pure darkness. But because of their ignorance, because they aren't created beings, they have to take us over. Because of that, they don't realize that they are creating their own demise. That if they were able to extinguish the light, they would cease to be as well. Okay, and that would be the end of all things. There's more of us in the light that will not let that happen. So I'm not concerned about that happening, about it being the end of all things. But we do have a very difficult struggle in that we've got to change so many people's minds. I'm going to stop myself right there. We don't have to change people's minds. We have to provide the evidence for people to make the choice on their own. I think properly portrayed, properly brought out to the people, I believe that people will choose to live in the light once they don't have the influences of this dark, black ugliness. You can call it AI, black goo, demonic realm, Satanists, whatever label you want to put on it. They want to destroy because they can't create. So that's why they try to get us to create that darkness for them. Okay. And that's why I want people to live in that that focused intent to be the very best they can be, to create the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Okay.
So,
Okay, with what you had in mind right there, I have a few questions for you, because
sure.
you're hoping, as you say, people are encouraged to notice what's going on with the darkness, the black goo, the AI, the alien interference, the mind parasites, whatever you want to call it. I think it's all part of the same thing. And a lot of people will notice that their life is not, shall we say, as loving or happy or light filled as they might like, which is what I'm sure is attracting a lot of people to these videos and your work and such. And yet I felt for myself, and I have talked with many others as well, as soon as they try and step into the more loving path, let's say, they are faced with many challenges, naturally. Most, in my opinion, or at least half, run back towards the darkness because of the stresses or the perceived stresses of losing their mind, right? Being rooted in their thought process, in their history, in their patterns, in their past. So what would you say to those watching that face those initial challenges, like when you want to step to the light and like you said, the monsters that come up right away and try and scare you back into the cage, so to speak?
Yes. When that happens, you have to understand, this was where it boils down to, are you an eternal being or not? Okay. And that's the underlying unknowing of people. Most people think that death is the end. That's one of the reasons why I want people to understand that it's not the end. And I know that if someone, and this is the difficulty that I'm finding in getting people to grasp this, because unless you experience it, it's a different experience. I mean, that's just an ipso facto thing. So what I encourage people to do is to stay diligent and to know that they can make it through anything. And when the dark is throwing these obstacles up, it's because you're such a good feeding trough to them. Okay. You're such a source of food to them. When you break away from that and you start living in courage, with courageous thoughts, knowing you're going to go through this no matter what you do, no matter what happens, you're going to stay on this path. That's the defining line. And I'm not judging anybody, but a lot of people, when they face those difficulties, they find it easier, and the dark will facilitate this. When you do go back into those dark ways of thinking, they'll make it pleasant for you for a little bit, because they know that a lot of people have the attention span of a goldfish. And so there's a saying that I use of, it might be shit, but it's comfortable shit. Okay. That's the ego. That's how people will say, yeah, it's bad, but I'm used to it, so I'm just going to keep going this way. And that's the people that keep eating the junk food, watching the television, which is nothing but a mind control device, and just not doing anything for themselves. And that's fine and dandy. Okay. The soul isn't going to judge you for that. It's just going to, it goes stagnant. Okay. I have a knowing about souls that they want to expand. Every soul that exists wants to be more than it is. That's one of the reasons why any parents listening to this, that that you want your children to be more than you were, okay, to be better than you were. And that's the way the soul sees us. I talk about times, there's times I talk about where souls can be consumed or damaged beyond repair and get taken over. And that's kind of a misnomer. Your ultimate soul that is sitting in the realm of the Creator, that's experiencing all these things through us, that can never be taken away. That can never be damaged. But we are layers and layers and layers as beings. We have different types of bodies. Through life, as you experience pain, you develop what I call the pain body. I think another person that talked about this was Eckhart Tolle. I pronounce it Tolle. Eckhart Tolle. He did The Power of Now. He talked about how the pain body works. I actually corresponded with him on emails through email about the pain body. We have emotional bodies, pain bodies, joyful bodies, astral bodies. We have all of these things. That's what gets consumed, not the soul. That would be silly for the soul to be able in itself to be consumed. And I'm talking the greater soul, the greatest self that you are, that is that spark of creator. Here, who we are, this is an avatar. It's a meat suit. This is not who we are. Our consciousness is who we are. Okay. So when you say losing your mind, what that means is you have to lose the trained mind. You have to start thinking freely, having your own thoughts, not reacting. That's the biggest difference in that.
So how would they do that when they've been focusing their entire lives into the box, let's say in their head, and they start getting poked, let's say by the aliens, monsters, other dimensional parasites?
They have to denounce them. They have to denounce the beings. They have to stand strong and knowing that they are a creator being that can create them out of their lives. They do that by creating a new life. Okay. And this is where I'm going to be saying this a lot as I talk to people on probably every video. You have to stay diligent. This is not an easy path. And it's not easy because of the rewards that we gain as creator beings. It takes being conscious of the words you're saying, being always focusing on living in the present. The present is a gift. Because the reason it's a gift is none of these dark beings that we give all these labels to, they can't exist in the now. Okay? They simply cannot. They have to focus on the past and try to guess what the future is going to be because they can't live here. When we live in the now and stay diligent with that, I am, I have, it is, we are. That's a new one I added. I used to just say I am, I have, it is, but you're also bringing in we are. Okay. You and I right now are in two completely different sides of the realm, and yet we're in the same now. Okay. This is, I use empty rooms as a teaching guide for people in the physical that I've taught to move through the room without the consciousness of time, not thinking about it took me 10 seconds to cross this room. If you open up to the now and you are in one part of the room and then you move across to another part of the room, if you're not using time, you realize when you turn around, I'm still in the now. Okay. And I use an empty room because it's a great analogy for our earth. Okay. We have a flat realm with a cover over it. It's sealed. You can't have a gaseous atmosphere that's open to a vacuum. Any common sense tells you that all the atmosphere would long ago have just been sucked into the void of the vacuum of space. And since it hasn't done that, the only way you can have a pressurized atmosphere, because what do they talk about here in weather? High pressure, low pressure, the barometric pressure. There's all these pressures. There has to be a sealed container for that. And I believe that's the electromagnetic dome that is around us. It's not only above us, but it also goes below us. So sort of tangenting there. This is when you're doing these things, you have to be diligent. When you say, I'm going to be a spiritual warrior, know that you're going to have difficulties. However, the next thought should be, I'm going to make it through these difficulties. And because I make it through these difficulties, I'm going to be a stronger warrior because of it. That's what the ego does. It tells you if you face these struggles, if you do this, it's going to end us. It's going to hurt us. We're going to have pain. We could die. And it just gives us, it doesn't necessarily do that in words. It'll give us some pictures of, oh my gosh, and then you get worried and fearful. And fear is false evidence appearing real. Okay. Everything appears real to us because we're creator beings. But the truth of the matter is, when you get down to the physics of things, even this metal cap for my thing, it appears solid, but it's not. This is something, it's in vibration, it's in movement, but my consciousness makes it real, okay? And makes everything real. This is when you get into the real esoteric feeling, thinking of things. You look at something and you say, that thing is solid, okay? And then you reach out and you touch it. But what you're not realizing is you really have never, ever touched anything. If you were to get down to a microscopic level, even with, it looks like my fingers are touching, I'm right here, even though it looks like they're touching, they're not. The truth of the matter is we've never touched anything, okay? We've only communicated with the frequencies, with our frequency. And that's how the world really works. So I want to give a caveat to people that you can quit at any time, but you're going to experience the consequences of that. Shortly after stepping off of the spiritual path, you're going to start experiencing some very dark and ugly things, because the dark forces that were feeding on you, that you restricted their feed, if you step off the path, they're going to have a smorgasbord with you, okay? And they're going to start putting things in your life to get you fearful and worried and upset, so that you create the leash that feeds them. I know that when I'm standing in my strength, when I'm standing in my courage, I know that I'm starving them. I know they can't feed on me. And so that's another encouragement that I want to give people. Be courageous. If you have fear, that's okay. Being fearful is okay for a moment, but the trick is to move through that fear, realizing that it is a false evidence appearing real. Okay. That's why I encourage meditation. The deeper you meditate, the longer you meditate in days, the longer amount of time that you meditate, your meditations can't help but get more deep. And you will start communicating with your highest self, that soul that I talk about that's sitting with Creator. Once you reach that point, you don't even think about getting off. You just learn that any difficulties that come up, you don't react to them. You say, okay, this difficulty's here. I've got to do this. This is how I'll fix this. Even better is when something happens, you say, okay, I'm going to meditate on this. And you sit down and you relax yourself into it and just let the ideas come. Okay, let your highest self show you different ways. Because when we react to things, we're only taking one way, okay? And that way it usually makes things worse, okay, when we do it that way. Whereas if you take a moment, you relax into it, you can see different pathways, you can see different things you can do. And sometimes the best thing to do is nothing, because it's false.
Yeah, sure.
And just letting it pass by. There's been things in my life where I know that before I went through the death experience, and Marcel is the one that makes me say that now. I used to say near-death experiences, but like she puts it, it was a full-on death experience. I left. I was gone for a while and I came back. And so excuse me, I just lost my train of thought.
You sharing with people when they go through their death experience.
Yes, when they go through their daily death experiences of dying to things, it becomes more comfortable. And then by the time a spiritual warrior steps out of this body, there's no fear whatsoever. And they're going to go on to even greater things in the continuation of our journey as a soul. So, but the thing we want to focus on here is here now in the present. Okay. And so I'm coming back to this, circling back. Be intent with your choices. Know that what you intend, you're going to experience, because your imagination is the engine of creation. Okay. So that's the thing that I want to convey to people. If you step off of the path that you've chosen to step on, it's not wrong, but you're going to have consequences. At the same time, just stepping onto this path, there are consequences for stepping onto this path, because you have to shed the old way of thinking. You can't just think about something for a moment and think that it's going to happen. You have to consciously say, in the here and now, I am this, I have this, it is this, we are this. And then carrying on that thought, knowing that you are always focused on that. If you catch yourself thinking incorrectly, like if you say, oh, I wish this would happen. No, cancel, 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 clear, 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 cancel, cancel, cancel. Wishing is for ego. I intend that I have this. When people start doing that, it becomes a natural, everyday thing, because we are repetitive beings. And so the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and the harder it is to step off of that path, because you know what the consequences are going to be the longer you're on it. And I'm talking just even a couple of weeks being on this path of the intent of knowing that you are an eternal being. So what are you going to do with that? That's where it's at right now.
Well, perhaps, I guess, in many ways during this conversation, the purposeful path, you had to die to your old life to be born into your new one. And no coincidence that it happened in the same hospital where you were born the first time.
Yes.
So the creator was obviously chatting with you at the time, through symbols and ideas and dreams. So perhaps something our viewers here could get a little bit of a grasp of is, if you wanted to follow a similar path, a path of freedom, a path of purpose, be prepared for what feels like a death or many deaths that are going to come your way, and get ready to deal with that.
And that's where you really find out, Lorenzo, that death is an illusion. Okay. Your shirt behind you, I've always liked that, elect to govern yourself. Okay. Because that's what you're doing, is you're taking control of your life. You're not letting other people determine for you. Okay. That was something I wanted to also bring in real quick, is the elements, the things that we have in our life. We have plants, we have animals, we have rocks and stones, and then we have us. Okay. The plants are the giveaway. The trees, the bushes, the food that are plants, they're the giveaway to us. Okay. The rocks and stones, the crystals, they're the holders of energy. Okay. They can hold our thoughts. If you were to see my desk around here, I've got rocks around. I've got all kinds of different rocks that mean things to me. I get an energy from them. I have crystals. I have, this is my little ninja rock. See this little guy? He looks like a little ninja guy. Okay. He holds a lot of my energies for me, and ideas and thoughts for when I go out into the ethers. See, there you go. Then the animals, the sweet medicine, are the transformers of dark, heavy energies into light energies. And I know pretty much every single human alive has experienced this. You'll be upset, and a cat will jump into your lap, or a dog will sit next to you and lay his head on your lap. And after a little bit, you just feel better, and you don't even know why. That's that transformative energy. And the sweet medicine that I work with in the ethers, that power is greatly enhanced. Okay. Now, human beings as creators are the determiners. Okay. We determine what will happen in our life every step of the way. Sometimes, and most of the time, a lot of times now, people have determined that Big Daddy government's going to take care of them, or the hospital's going to take care of them. Our life life right now is guided towards giving your power away to others to control you. And we feel that that's natural because of the entities that are attached to us. We're used to losing our energy. Most people have never experienced their full creative powers as a creator being. That's why what I offer is the learning how, and I'm going to be teaching a lot of people this, and it's going to have a great impact on our world, is teaching people to sever the ties of the entities that are sucking our energy off of us. Once more people start standing in their power, we're going to be able to accomplish a lot more in this realm. Okay. So that's what this is all about, staying in intent and not succumbing to any worries, doubts, or fears, and being the determiner of your life. I intend that this is the way I'm living my life, and walking one step at a time, knowing that you have the whole universe in abundance, ready to give you whatever you choose to experience, whether that be something dark and upsetting or something joyful and light that expands your consciousness to places that most people have never even experienced. So,
QuietBear, that's a great ending, I think, for the Purposeful Path. I have like 100 more questions, but I know they would take hours and hours to answer, and I don't want to kind of leave anybody hanging with part answers or part bits of intent. We'll cover them for
yes,
for sure. So the Purposeful Path, fantastic. I think QuietBear showed you that, maybe your own little death is required, maybe a bit of a recapitulation as he was forced to while he was into the other world, a quick look at yourself and to understand, you're a creator being, and, pick it all up, govern yourself, figure your own way through, and let it be known. I guess QuietBear is here to say there's always help if you require it in learning to help yourself. Absolutely.
And just be strong, walk in strength, be courageous, and you will make it through anything.
I would agree. QuietBear, this has been a beautiful chat. It always goes into places I never expected, but they're more beautiful and more informative than I could have imagined. And we'll be back again. I will get this up very soon. If anybody has questions, suggestions, recommendations, and the sort, please leave the comments below. I will I will share QuietBear's contact. And if anybody requires anything, let us know. And if it's intelligent and loving and we feel helpful, we'll be happy to help.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys all again very, very soon. I love you very much. Thanks again, QuietBear. More coming up. More soon.
Lie to my heart. No one tells me where I should